So what we're gonna do today, we're gonna talk about topic today. All right, wait, sorry. The topic today is about display, margin, padding, borders, and a little bit about text formatting. All right. Okay, so we've been through CSS. You know how to add your CSS in your HTML, except I have not shown you how to add CSS using external file, which I'm going to show it today later. All right, so I'm sure you've tried this font weight, all right, but in order for you to use font weight from Google Fonts, you have to make sure that you also need to include the font weight from Google Classroom. You can increase the font weight in Google Classroom. All right.
Okay.
If you don't know, I'll show you again later after this. All right. So the property is font weight. All right. So normally you have, for the value of font weight is basically between 700 onwards. Right. Okay. For I think the normal weight for a typeface of font is 400, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to check later in Google Fonts. All right. So if you want to increase the weight of your font in a body copy, okay, you would want to use this property called font weight, or maybe you'll be using it in your header. All right. So normally when you download when you link your font from Google Fonts, you will have the normal font, right? And then what you can do, you can add this property in the heading as well, right? And then you have italic, right? So if you want to create an italic text, you can use the font style property. So there are three values this property can take: normal, which is the normal style; italic text, it will appear italic, or oblique. It's almost the same. Huh? All right. So that the property is font style. Okay. Have you tried that before in your tryout last week? No. Huh?
No, I didn't.
All right, never mind. You can try later. All right, because you have some in your previous document you did for HTML file. You have certain words that is oblique or italic, right? You can use that font.
Oh, italic. Got.
Okay, you can try that. All right, and then you can even set your certain words using uppercase or lowercase by using the text transform property. Probably what you want to have, basically you want to have all your headings using uppercase. All right, so you don't have to type in your source file or in your HTML file using uppercase. You can set using CSS. All right, again, I will show you the example on how to do it later in River. All right, so you have uppercase, you have lowercase, and you also have capitalized, meaning that the first letter will appear using uppercase. All right, so the property is text transform. The value is uppercase, lowercase, or capitalized. All right, and then you have text decoration. This is basically a default setting for hyperlink text. All right, a link text. Normally, a hyperlink text will appear with underline. All right, sometimes you may want to remove the underline, right, to make it a bit more appealing to your style or to your concept. All right, so what you can do, you can use this property called text decoration to remove the underline on your link text by using the none value. Or if, let's say, you want to underline your header, you want to create emphasize, you can use underline. All right, or if you want to strike through certain words, all right, and in certain case you need to do that, right? So you can use line through. Okay, overline is a line above the text. It is called overline. All right, so line through is basically a strike through lah. It's similar to Adobe Illustrator. Right? If you look at character panel, you can see it strike through, right? In CSS, we call it line through. So all the four name here, none, underline, overline, and line through are basically values. All right. So the property is text decoration. Okay. I hope you understand by now. Right. These terminologies that I'm using. All right.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. And then you have also text indent. Sometime in the first paragraph that you have in your document, you want to have some indentation because you don't want to have a text or line space between paragraph. What you can do is you can set an indentation. All right. So what you can do, you can give it a negative value. The value I will check later. I'm not sure about the value. I think it's not negative 10 pixel. And we're going to try later. All right. So the amount you want to have, the value that you want for the property is basically either EM or pixels. All right. Depend on the value that you set for your font size. Right. So and then you can also apply text shadow. All right. Again, text shadow have multiple values. All right. You have the X, Y, and the radius. Right. So within a text shadow property, you have about 4 values. X, Y. Yeah, 4 values, including the color of the shadow. Right. So if you add text shadow in Illustrator, you won't see this value because you can control the degree or the distance, right?
Yeah.
In Photoshop or Illustrator, what you can do is you need to set the distance, the radius, and also the degree of the angle of the shadow, correct? So in CSS, you need to set the X, the Y, or the H and the V, horizontal value, vertical value, and also the radius, okay, and also the color. We're gonna try all this later. All right, and then talk about this. All right, we're gonna read later. All right, then we need to talk about box models. Any question about the text formatting, text property? Guys, any question about text property?
Not for me.
All right, so I think the best is to try out later in your HTML file, then you know how it's going to look like. All right, and then we're going to talk about box model, CSS box model. So by default, as I mentioned earlier, I think in week 3, okay, remember we have different type of HTML character. It's either box or block, it's either block, level element, or inline element. Correct? Do you still remember what is block, level element, or block element, or inline element?
Yes, I do.
What is it? Can you explain to me what is the difference between block element and inline element?
Week 2.
We talked about it in week 2.
Yeah.
If you take note of that, you probably remember or can recap what is it. Try to explain to me using your own word. What do you understand by these two terms? Block element or block level element or inline element. Yang Feng. Is Yang Feng here?
Spot check.
Yeah.
Okay, can you explain to me what is block element and what is inline element?
Sorry, I don't know how to explain by English.
Okay, all right. Anybody else who wants to try? Kai?
The space.
What? Who's that? Is it Damia?
Yeah.
What do you mean by space, Damia?
It's like a border between elements.
Border between element. Not quite. Anybody else want to try?
Block elements.
It's like there's a line break. There's like an animation break.
Hold on. Can you call your name first? Then I allow you to talk.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
This
Yes.
is Serene.
Who's that? Ashtasham.
Serene.
Serene. Okay, Serene. Let Serene explain. Serene, explain, Serene.
For my understanding, right?
Yeah.
Block element is the element that you can separate it paragraph by paragraph.
Okay. Can
For
accept.
the inline element is the element that you cannot it cannot stand alone. It has to be inside the block element.
Okay, can you give me one example of a block element? I mean, one tag that is considered as block element, one HTML tag that is considered as inline element.
Like for example, the block element is like the heading H1 until H6,
Okay.
and then or key paragraph.
Correct.
And then for the inline element can be like you want to bold it or italic, I think. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Shirin. Okay, so I hope you can understand better now after Shirin explained to you, right? So basically a block element is like a box lah, you know. By default, the way, remember when you add a paragraph in your document, right? The tag is basically fill out the entire width, correct?
Yes.
Correct. So if you want to create another paragraph, it will appear in a new line, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's how a block element looks like. Okay, if you add a border, you will see a line, okay, covering those paragraphs. Okay, so that is the nature of block element. But as inline element, it doesn't look that way. It stays in line like your I, your B, your A. Right? You cannot, if for example, if you have two words using bold, for example, right? The second bold will not appear on the new line. It will appear in the same line. Okay, that is the difference between block element and inline element. Right. So what you can do with a block element is you can add border, you can add dimension, you can add size into it. Right? Okay, so sometimes you can even change the display of this element. Okay, block element or inline element. You can change the appearance using display property. Sometimes because, for example, if you have like a list that you're going to use as a navigation later on in your web, right? So normally by nature, by default, the list appears as block element, right? The list item appear in on top of each other. It collapses, correct? But if you want to create a navigation, you want to use it as a navigation, you need to make it as an inline. So what you need to do, what you can do is you can change the display of li to become a block element. All right? Okay, never mind. We're going to do that later. Okay, we're going to try out later. All right? So, okay, by default, a box is sized just big enough to hold its content. Okay, to set your own dimension for a box, you can use the height and the width properties. Did I explain this? Okay, I explained this already. Okay, all right. Okay, so let me continue. The most popular ways to specify the size of a box are to use either pixels or percentage. Okay, pixel is basically you set it as a fixed size, but percentage is basically more on relative size, meaning that it can be relative to the viewport of your screen. Basically, if you use percentage, you're creating a responsive website. Okay, so traditionally, long time ago, you use pixel to set the height and width of a box. All right, because you want to have an accurate control of the whole website. Okay, but when you use percentage, it does not the box is relative to the. Okay, let me read this. When you use percentage, okay, the size of the box is relative to the size of the browser window. I think now it becomes very liquid. It becomes liquid. No? Okay, all right. And then if the box is encased within another box, it is a percentage of the size of the containing box. Meaning that, for example, if you have a parent element, right? A parent element is like your body. The body in your HTML document act as a parent element. Why parent element? Because within a body section, you have all the headings, paragraph, images, etc. Correct? Okay, if you set a body using 50% or 80%, for example, of the width, so everything within that body will follow what the parent element use to set the width of the box. Okay, understand?
Yes,
so far?
I think yeah.
Okay, never mind. I need to show you lah. Right, but explaining to like this, probably you can't imagine how it's going to look like. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what you could also do is basically you can limit the width of your of a box. It does so that it doesn't expand, because sometimes when you want to create a layout, for example, right? You have set the layout maybe 80%. All right. So within the box, you have 2 columns. So each column you need to set it as 50% by 50%. If you set at one box of 50%, another box 80%, it exceeds the percentage that you've set earlier in the parent element, which is 80%.
Understand.
All right.
Okay. Yes.
So what you should do is you can set a minimum width or maximum width. Minimum width is basically the smallest size of a box can go. Okay, if you set a box to maximum width, is basically the biggest size that the box can go.
Okay.
Right. Okay, some page design expand and shrink to fit the size of the user screen. Because when you design your website, you're not only designing it for your desktop, but also for your mobile devices, like your tablet and your handphones. Okay, you again I've talked about this in week 2 about different size, different screen and whatnot, right? Okay, basically we are talking about viewport. So what you can do, so you can use min width or max width, so that it appears nicely in your desktop and also in your mobile devices. Okay, so in such design, the min width property specifies the smallest size a box can be displayed at when the browser window narrow or become smaller. All right, and the max width property indicates the maximum width a box can stretch to when the browser window is wide. Okay, these are very helpful properties to ensure that the content of a page are legible. Okay, and then you can also set the height of a box, minimum height, maximum height, right? The reason why we need to set this min height or max height is because sometimes your content, meaning that the words within a box, for example, is basically exceeding the size that you've set earlier. For example, all right, for example, you set the height of a box about 300 pixels. All right.
Okay.
But when you include an image and also a text in that particular box, probably what happened, the content will basically overflow or exceed the size. So what happened when you have 2 box collapse on top of each other, right? So what happened is the size of the box remain the same as 300 pixels, but the content will overflow. All right, it's outside of the box and it overlaps the content underneath it. So that's going to be like chaotic and your layout is going to be like horrible. So what you can do is you can set the using min height as the height of the box. All right. So in the same way that you might want to limit the width of a box on a page, you may also want to limit the height of it. So this is achieved using the min height or max height properties. So if the box is not big enough to hold the content and the content expands outside the box, it can look very messy, right? So to control what happens when there is not enough space for the content of the box, you can use the overflow property. Okay, there's another property that you can also use, which is basically overflow. Okay, you can set whether you want to set it auto, hide, or scroll. Okay, again, let me just explain. Later you will see this. Right, so the overflow property tells the browser what to do if the content contained within a box is larger than the box itself. So it can have 2 values, which either hidden or scroll. If you set the value to hidden, the rest of the content that overflow from the box will be hidden. Basically, it's like you're masking the content, right? This could be used when you want to control the length of your words in your landing page, for example, because you want to set everything to be the same level, right? So what you can do, you can use hidden. All right, I would not suggest to use scroll because sometimes what happens is the scroll will make your box slightly thicker because you have a scroll within a scroll bar. Obviously, if you have a website that is very long, you're going to have a scroll on your right, correct?
Yeah,
That's one scroll bar, correct? And then suddenly you have another scroll bar. Like it's like you attach like how you attach your PDF file in your Blogger, correct?
Understand.
So it's similar.
Oh,
It's
okay.
similar, but you're using iframe. You're using iframe when you attach your PDF file, right? But here you don't need to use iframe. Okay, you can just use a normal box, a normal div, for example, to add that, to create a layout. Okay. So the overflow property is particularly handy because some browsers allows users to adjust the size to the text to appear as large or small as they want. Sometimes you can have like a handlebar at the corner, or at the bottom corner of a box, then you can enlarge the box. Sometimes you have that. Probably Chrome have that, or Firefox have that as well. Right? If the text is set too large, then the page can become an unreadable mess. Right? So hiding the overflow on such boxes help prevent items overlapping on the page. All right, and then by default, so all the boxes that you have, you can apply border, margin, and padding. So what is a border? Okay, every box has a border. By default, it has a border, but it doesn't appear because it is set to 0. Okay, by default, every element or every block element in your HTML document has a border, a margin, or a padding. Okay, by default, there's a certain amount of value. Okay, you can set to 0 if you want to, all right, or you can add some value onto the margin. Okay, so even if it's not visible or it's specified to be 0 pixel white, okay, but no, by default it is 0 pixel or 0. So the border separates the edge of a box from one another. Okay, later I'll show you how to add a border. All right, and you can also have margin. Remember when you create your website, or when you create, for example, your poster, right? Or remember your advanced typography exercise, the typographic system. Remember, we always mention or remind you to have a margin, right? So, but in HTML, you could also do the same thing, but you need to use the property, margin property in your CSS, all right? And you need to be careful on using a margin. You need to understand some math, okay? You needed some math, okay? All right. And then you can also add padding. Padding is basically, if you can see, there's a color, right? Indicating different property. All right. So the blue color is basically, if you can see at the word at the bottom, hello. So the blue color is basically the border. It's in between the box. All right. Padding is inside a box. The hello word, the purple is basically the size of the content. All right. Margin is basically a space outside the box. For example, if you have like an overlapping box, right? If you want to have some space in between the box, what you can do is you can add margin. Okay. All right. And then if you have a background color on a box, for example, and you don't want to have the text appear too close to the bounding box, what you can do, you can apply padding so that you have a space around the text. But what happens if you add padding? Okay, the physical size of the box, all right, will expand depending on the amount of padding that you've added. For example, okay, the size of a paragraph you've set for probably the width is 400 pixel by 300 pixel. Okay, but when you add a padding about 10 pixel within that paragraph, what happened is the width will expand 20 pixels extra for both sides, 1 pixel on the left and 1 pixel on the right. So it will make the size of the paragraph slightly bigger. Okay, I will show you, then you understand better. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, then we talk about display property. I've talked about this before. All right. Display properties is most important property for controlling your layout. Every element has a default display value depending on what type of element it is. Okay. Again, type of element basically is either block or inline, right? Okay, I'm going to skip this. I already explained to you this, right? And I also explained to you this as well. Okay, but before HTML was introduced, all right, to create a layout for a web, we normally use a div element. Div element is a standard block level element. A block element starts on a new line and stretches out to the left and right as far as it can. Meaning that a div is basically a generic block element. Okay, similar to span. Span is a generic inline element. It doesn't show you, it doesn't change whatever content that you have in a div. For example, if you're using H1, right? H1 basically indicates as a heading, correct? Okay?
Yeah.
P indicates as a paragraph. A tells the browser it's a link. All right. So all that element has certain use or function, right? But for block element, for div element, is basically a generic element. It's just creating a box for you to fill up a content, whether it's a paragraph, a heading, or images. So what div do is basically it create divisions.
Understand.
Okay, or you can use div to create a column, rows or column. All right,
Okay.
but after they introduced HTML5, what happened is they have like a semantic HTML. Semantic HTML meaning that they add more HTML with a proper function. For example, like header, footer, section, division, right, aside, etc. So all these are basically tells the browser what you could have in your basically when you create a document, right, a web document, you probably need to have to separate all the content within within individual sections, like a header, a body, header, division, sections, or footer. So within that individual header, footer, a section, or a site, you can add other content like your paragraph and image. All right. Previously, what we did, we use div and we add an ID name. Okay, div, ID name, header, footer, section, aside, etc. Right? But since HTML5 was introduced, we don't need to use a div anymore. What we can do is we can use the HTML5 element, which is header, footer, and so on. All right. Okay. Okay, and then you have inline element. Inline element is basically the one that I explained, which is B, I, emphasis, strong, what else? A, all right? You can also, there's also a generic inline element, which is span, all right? For example, if you want to highlight certain words, right? Highlight certain word. What you can do, you can wrap the sentence within using span, and you can set the span to have a background color, for example, so that the entire text will be highlighted, for example. Okay. Again, I will show you the demo, show you how to do it in Dreamweaver. All right. So the A element is the most common inline element since you use them for links. All right. So every element has a default display type. So you can always override this. Okay, you can always override this. For example, if the element is inline element, you can override it by changing the display. Okay, to make it a block, for example. So a common example is making inline li element for horizontal menus. Okay, I explained to you just now. Okay. All right. So we're gonna do that. I'm gonna show you how to do it. All right. But first, I think I need to okay, for this demo, I'm going to create a new document so that you can understand better. All right.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to start with my Dreamweaver. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new HTML file. Okay, this is how you create a new file. Huh? Okay, you click the create new button. All right. You can also set the title immediately. Okay, maybe I'm going to type this as layout exercise. All right, so just leave it there, HTML5 as it is, and click create. All right, so there you go. You will see the layout exercise there as a title. All right, so what I'm going to do next is basically I'm going to save this file first. Okay, I'm going to save this file in a folder that I've already created earlier, which is exercise 4. All right, I'm going to name this as index. All right, and save as. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layout. Right, a layout that looks like this. Okay, I'm going to draw the layout here. Can you see my screen, right?
Yes, can.
I'm now at the moment I'm opening my
Illustrator.
Illustrator, correct? Okay. So what I'm going to, okay, sorry. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a simple web layout. I'm going to use this web large create. All right, probably okay. This is the width. Okay, when you start a new document in Illustrator, when you set that size, it's basically the size of the screen. Sometimes, if you want to create a landing page, you might want to make it slightly longer. So you add the height. Probably the height I want to set to 2,500. Okay. All right. So normally in a web, you will have in a normal document, you will have a header. And then you will have one section on top where you have the images, the text and whatnot, or the call to action button here, right? And you will have probably 3 columns of this. Right. Make sure that the spacing is even. Spacing is even. All right. And then probably you have a footer. I'm going to create one simple layout today, just for you to see how it's going to be created. All right. Zoom in so that, yeah. So probably the footer is not this long lah. It's going to be like this big. About 330 pixel. Okay, 330 pixel. Okay, sometimes what you need to do, you need to have a space in between that. So it looks neat. Okay, so this is just the rough layout. So what happened is basically in the header, you probably gonna add a logo, a navigation.
Yep.
Here you probably gonna have like a heading and a background image. Right. So here probably you're gonna have like an image and a text. Image and a text. Image and a text. Correct. All right. Here probably you're gonna have like a list of your menu, your social media icons, your copyright information. Okay. If you look at one example here, I'm going to show you some example of a landing page. All right, can you see? This is an example of a landing page. So the height is quite long. Huh? Okay, this is another example of a landing page. All right, another very simple example of a landing page, and another example of a landing page. So what does a landing page have is basically, it's like a teaser of what you're going to have inside your website, right? But the most important thing that you need to have in your landing page is the call to action. So as you can see in this example, the buy ticket, is it buy ticket?
Yeah.
Yeah, is the call to action, right? If you look here, view the demo or join us on, I can't read that, it's very small. Okay, that is the call to action as well. Or sign up. Okay, here, the call to action is basically this. So the call to action button should appear on top of the page. Okay. All right. Here, if you can look closely later, you can just find this in Pinterest or Behance. Okay, this example you can find from Pinterest or Behance. Right, but normally, okay, here is very clear. All right. So it's a music concert. All right. So the call to action button is join now. Okay, so you need to basically indicate those in your landing page. All right, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come out with the design, the layout of the page only. All right. Make it smaller. So you have like this. All right. Okay, so make sure that when you design your landing page, the width of the content that you're going to have doesn't have to be within the width of the screen set or the screen resolution. Understand? So it must be smaller, right? So that you have some margin on the side. Okay, if you look at the example here as well. Right? Okay, this is the width of the screen, right? But the content only within this size. You can see?
Yes.
Right? All right. So make sure that you do that. Huh? The same goes to this page as well. Although the width of the screen is probably 1900, but the content is basically slightly smaller than the screen setting. Okay, if you look at all the websites that you've been, probably you can notice that as well. Right? So when you design in Illustrator or Photoshop, do the same thing as well. Right? Make sure when you set the document size, probably you choose the biggest or the largest document, but the content area that you're going to have is just slightly within this size. Okay, maybe 20% smaller than the screen resolution. All right, so basically, okay, what I'm going to do here, so this is just the basic layout. So I'm going to create this layout in my Dreamweaver. Okay, all right, so what I'm going to do is, first I've saved this file, then I need to include those sections. All right, those sections. But remember, all these sections should be within a container. Okay, why you need to include this inside a container? Okay, I'm going to show you slightly, enlarge it a bit. Okay, so this is basically the container. The container is basically to hold everything so that it doesn't move. So the layout is nice, intact, within the dimension that you set. So to have that, to create that, you need to have a container. Okay. So it's like a bekas lah. Inside your bekas, you have the kueh. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like the Japanese food. What do you call it? What's the Japanese food that you have? Where it's like you have different section, different compartment. Bento box. Yes, bento box. So bento box is a huge container, right? Within the bento box, you have the sashimi lah, you have the soup lah, you have the rice lah, you have the vegetables lah. It's almost the same. right?
Uh-huh.
So that the kuah doesn't tumpah, doesn't spill outside the thing. All right, someone just come in. Okay, so what I'm gonna do? Okay, go back to my Dreamweaver. So first, I'm gonna insert a div first. All right, a div. I'm gonna name this div. I'm gonna give an ID name as container.
Okay.
All right. So what a container do is basically it holds everything. So within the container, you need to add other parts of the HTML document or the website, which is the header, right? You can also include section. You can also include, okay, for this particular part here, these three here, okay, it is best to have another section that holds all these three. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another section, right? And within that section, okay, I'm going to include a site. Okay, I'm going to have three asides. Okay, you can just copy that. All right, and then you have, finally you have the footer. Okay, so by right later what you can do, you can add the content, which I'm not going to do this now. I'm just going to show you how to create the layout. All right, okay. So today you need to do two, this exercise and also you need to start your project one as well.
Yeah.
Let me decide which one you should start first. Okay. All right. Okay. So once you have this, all right, save it. You need to you need to give it a width and height and whatnot, right? How to do that? You need to create a CSS. Okay. This time I'm not going to use the inline or the embedded style. I'm going to use an external style. Meaning that I'm going to create another document and it will link from the HTML file. Okay, so I'm going to create a CSS file. Okay, choose CSS. Remember to choose CSS, guys. So you have HTML file, you have CSS. Okay, the rest just leave it. Don't touch anything. You're going to use these two only, these two options only, HTML and CSS only. So the second part is of the demonstration is I'm going to create a CSS file. Okay, create CSS file. So basically a CSS file is basically a blank document. It's like a text document, right? But you don't have to change the extension. You just need to save the file and it automatically will have the .css document at the end. Okay, so this is the char set similar to what you see in your text edit file or notepad file. Okay, this is a comment. Okay, this is a comment. Okay, how a comment looks like in Dreamweaver CSS is totally different from what you see in HTML. Okay, in HTML, to add a comment, you will add this, right? Okay, this is a comment. Comment, right? In HTML. And in CSS, this is the comment. Yeah. And section. You can type anything. You can type your name, the date of this type, the document was created, and also what purpose. Okay. Right. So once you have create a new CSS file, you cannot change the view. You only have one view for CSS file. Okay. So that is the difference between a HTML file and also CSS file, so that you can see the difference in Dreamweaver. Okay. So once you have that, okay, don't do anything yet. You need to save this file. So it's name, save this. I'm going to save this as style underscore index lah. Because I'm going to link it with the index file. I'm going to save this as style._index.css. Remember, do not delete this part. Okay, make sure that you need to don't delete lah basically. Okay, then you save it. Right, so once you have that, the next thing you need to do is you need to link the style document into your HTML file from your HTML document.
Okay.
All right, so to do that, you need to use the link element in the head section. But since you're using Dreamweaver, you don't need to type the link, etc., etc. Okay, what you need to do is you need to look for the CSS designer panel on your right. Okay, which is here. If you don't see this panel, okay, what you can do is you can open the panel from the window. Okay, CSS designer. Okay, understand? Guys.
Yep.
Okay, so to add that, you need to click this button here, add CSS source. So you can either create a new CSS file, or you can attach it, or you can define a page. Okay, either two, not define page. Either two, create a new CSS file or attach existing file. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna attach existing CSS file because I already created one. Okay, choose that, browse. So this is what happens if you do not define your site.
Okay.
Remember, I showed you last week, right? How to define a site. I hope you still remember.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna define this site first, so it's easy. So go to files. Sorry, I hope you can just follow the video later. Okay, I'm gonna manage this file first. I'm gonna create a new site. Name it as exercise layout. Okay, I'm gonna locate the folder which is exercise 4. Choose, save, okay, done. All right. So now, if I go to CSS designer, attach existing CSS file, browse. I don't know what happened. It's supposed to link to this folder. Okay, never mind. Okay, we're going to select this file. This is the file that I just created earlier. Then click open. Then make sure it is link, not import, link. Then click OK. So automatically you will see this link here in your HTML file. Okay, make sure that the href is style_index.css. It shouldn't be document / desktop / the folder name, then the file name. Understand?
Understand.
Okay, all right, so now let me preview this. At the moment, nothing happens because it's still blank. All right, I need to add something. All right, so I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver. I'm going to add something here. I'm going to add maybe in the header. I'm going to just put here, this is a header. So that you can see the difference. This is the header. And then this is section. Okay, a site 1, a site 2, site 3. Okay, and then finally you have the footer. Okay, you can also add a paragraph or heading lah if you want to, right? That one you can do it later. Okay, so at the moment you will see like this, just like that. Okay, so you can see that the blue border here, right? And if I click the header, you can see the orange border. So that is basically indicating it is a block element. Okay, all right. So in the browser, we'll also see this. Okay, all right. So what we're gonna do first is basically now we need to set the width and height. All right, and also we could also I can also, I'm gonna add some background color so that you can see the difference between each section,
Okay.
right? So okay, another thing about Dreamweaver is when you link the CSS file, you don't need to open the file anymore. You can close the file because you have two tabs now. One is the source code, which is HTML file, and then the other tab is the CSS file. So you don't have to open multiple files. Okay, understand so far? All right, so now let me just start with the layout. Okay, remember, okay, this is the way we type CSS in using CSS document is slightly different from the way we type in the previous exercise, right? Because previously we need to include style element, correct, in HTML file.
Yes.
Here we don't need to do that because this CSS file basically is already a CSS document. So what you need to do, you need to just add the selector, which is first I'm going to set the body. Okay. Okay. By default, a body has basically slight padding and margin. Okay. If you don't believe me, I'm going to add a background color first. I'm going to add background color. I'm going to use very light background color. I don't know why I choose this color. I'm going to use blue lah. Can you suggest any color? Okay lah, this one lah. Okay, just for the demonstration purpose only. Okay. Okay. So and then okay. Wait ah. Okay, you can see there. There's a space, right?
Yeah.
From the window and also the text, right? So this is basically a default setting of a browser which include a margin and a padding, right? I think probably about 5 pixels, if I'm not mistaken, right? If you want to remove that, it's up to you, all right? If you don't want to remove that, it's also up to you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the margin and border. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set margin to 0 and padding to 0 as well. Okay, so now what happened? You can see the content now is very close to the, don't worry because I'm going to resize the width of the container. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to set the width of this container. All right, so next is I'm going to select a container. Okay, since a container is using an ID name, all right, so to call that selector, you need to use hash. Okay, so by default, when you use Dreamweaver, right, every time when you type a hash in CSS, you will see all the ID names that you use in your HTML file. So at the moment, I only have like one ID name, which is container. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to press that. I'm going to press return. Okay, then I'm going to select that container. Then curly braces. I'm going to set the width first. The width at the moment. Okay, at the moment, I'm going to use a fixed size. All right, probably about 800 px. Okay, done. All right, and I will also add a background color so that you can see the difference between a margin, a body, and the container. Background color. I'm going to use different color. I'm going to use a blue theme today. All right. Okay. At the moment, I'm going to do this first. Huh?
All right.
Right. So you can see the difference. So now you can see. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So the width is this. This is the width. 800 pixels. I think probably it's too small. I'm going to increase the width later. All right. But the height is like this because I did not set the height. What determines the height is basically the content.
Understand.
Right. So I don't set the height in my container because I will allow the content to decide or to determine the height later. All right. So let me go back to CSS. Probably I'm going to make it slightly bigger. I'm going to set that to maybe 1000 pixel. Okay, now it looks bigger. All right. And then, okay, by default, everything starts from the left to right.
Okay.
Okay, so that's by default. So what you can do, you can change that. if you want to make the position, if you want to move the position of the content to the center of the screen, what you need to do is you need to set the margin to auto. Okay, I will explain further about margin. Okay, for margin, okay, for this container, you just need to set it as auto so that the browser will set the margin for you automatically, the left and the right.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so what happens if I add padding? So if I add padding in my container, probably about 20px, probably the value will change depending on the, okay, see now, now you have some space within the container. So now you have 20 pixel top, left, bottom, right. Okay. Okay. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add a border to make it much more clearer. Okay. So I'm gonna add border 1px, and you can also choose color. Maybe I'm gonna choose dark blue. And also you need to set what type of border that you want to use. There are many types of border that you can use. Okay, I'm going to use solid.
Oh, okay.
Groove is like you have two lines lah. One light, one dark. It's like 3D. Okay. All right, I'm going to use solid. Okay, you can try later different type of border. Okay, this is a border. This is a border. Okay, you can't see the margin padding because you can't add color. Okay, all right. Okay, and then padding. What is margin? Sorry, margin. Okay, I already set margin auto. Okay, okay. What you can do for this particular property, margin, padding, and border, you can apply to different sites as well. For example, here if you use the margin property, it will basically you have a margin on all sides. But if you set like margin left, okay, and then margin right auto, and then margin top about 20px, you will see that there is a space on top because I set margin top 20, margin left and right auto. But when you type in CSS, it's going to be like very long, correct? So what you can do, you can make it shorter. You can use shorthand. Okay, if you want to use shorthand, you can just use margin top 20px, left and right auto. That is the shortcut key. Top, right, bottom, left. So you can see you don't have to type margin left, margin right, margin top, margin bottom. Instead, you can use shorthand. You can set the margin top 20, right, top, right, bottom, left. Okay, top, right, bottom, left. How I know? You remember? Clockwise. Top, right, bottom, left. Okay? Or if you just want to set your left and right to set to auto, what you can do, you can just do like this. So this will indicate that the margin left and right auto, you can see here. And margin top and bottom 20 pixel. Okay. So now the look and feel is going to be like the same. Okay, sorry, I did not save this. Margin top. Oh, sorry. You know what happened? I forgot to add this. The semicolon. So you have to be very careful. Huh? Okay, so now you have margin, padding, and border. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add the size for the rest. For now, I'm going to set the header. Since the header does not use any ID and whatnot, so I'm going to just type the
Header.
selected as header lah. Alright, because it's header. Okay, so I'm gonna set the height to probably about, let me just check my HTML of my Illustrator file. Okay, you can just follow this. So the size is about 183. So I'm gonna set it about 180 lah. Say height 180 pixel. Okay, and then I'm gonna add a background color so that you can see the difference. Okay, that's it for now. I did not set the width of the header because I want to have the header to have the same width as the content. Okay, see now, remember I told you about padding, right?
Yeah.
When you add a padding, what happened is the physical size of the container now becomes slightly bigger. It add up about 20 pixel here and 20 pixel here.
Okay.
So now it becomes about 1040 pixel. Okay, if you're okay with that, it's fine. But if you still want to make sure that the size is basically within that 1000 pixel, what you can do is you can set in the container as a new property, which is border, sorry, not border, box, sizing, border box. Okay, box sizing, border box, so that the size will basically stay within 1000 pixel. It doesn't expand to 1040 pixel.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Okay, I will explain later about box sizing once we touch a side here. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So next is we already set the height of the header. Next is we're going to set the section. All right, so section. Section. Again, I'm going to set the width. Sorry, not width, height. Height to 400 pixel. Okay, and then background color. Color to that color. Okay, now you go.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all right. Next thing. Okay, so now remember you have two sections, right? Okay, remember you have two sections, right? So what you've done, basically, what I've done basically, I've set both sections to use to follow this rule. But what if I only want to ask one section to follow this rule? The other section needs to will use a different style. How to do that? Remember here in my HTML document, I have two sections. One here and the other one is here. Correct. So what I did in my CSS, I've set the height and background color to this style.
Okay. Right.
What if I want to have both sections using different style? This section using different style, another section using different style. So what should I do? Come again, I cannot hear you.
Using class.
Using class. Okay, another way is you can also use ID lah, but in this case maybe we can use class as well. Okay, since this is unique, right? Since this is unique, what we can do is we can add an ID name. All right, okay, so we're gonna give a name. I'm gonna use it content lah. Content. All right, so I'm gonna give an ID name content. So go back to my CSS. Now I'm gonna select the content ID, and then I'm gonna set the height to slightly smaller, which is 350 pixel, and different background color. Okay, now you can see, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, different side, height, and different background color. All right, what you can do now, you can add margin if you want to have a space. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a margin on my section, margin bottom, about 20 pixel. There you go. Okay, you can also add margin. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use the shorthand. Margin, this one, 0. So margin left, right, and left 0, top and bottom 20 pixel. So I can have that. Okay, so far, are you following, guys?
Yes, actually.
So far, okay, yeah?
Yeah, but maybe need to rewatch a bit.
Yeah, you have to rewatch a bit and you can just do it later. I'm going to come up with another layout and then you can do that, okay? All right, so next thing is going to add the footer. Okay, I'm going to set the height to 200 px and also a different background color. I'll use black for my head footer. Okay, right. Then you have the footer at the bottom. All right. So next thing is I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a layout for this 3 column here, which is inside a site. So what I'm gonna do here. Okay, since I have only one, I have one aside. I'm gonna give it a class name. Okay, I'm gonna name it as column. All right. Copy this. Paste it here. Paste it here as well. All right. So I'm gonna use all the 3 aside using the same class name. All right. So that in here. Okay, to select the class name from CSS, you need to use period or full stop. Okay, period or full stop to select that class name. Okay, so now I want to set the width now. Width. Okay, so by right, the total width of my container is 1000 pixel, correct? So I need to divide into 3. Probably the best value is how many? 300 pixel. Huh?
Yeah, 300.
300 pixel. Huh? So I'm going to set the width to 300 px. The height to 350 pixel. And I'm gonna set the background color as well. Right. Okay, but it's not really happening because, okay, remember I told you about min height, max height, overflow. This is basically what happened if you overflow. Okay, see here. So remember, this aside sits inside content. Remember, the content, the height of the content you said earlier is about 350 pixel, correct? Okay, it doesn't expand because you've used a fixed height. What if in the content you set it as min height? And you add overflow auto. Automatically you're going to have this. Right? You see? All 3 aside are within the container. All right? It shouldn't be that way. Okay, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is basically, right?
Isn't that like scroll, sir?
Yeah, it's scroll. It's not supposed to be scroller. It's supposed to be like, it's going to expand. Min height. Okay, never mind. I'm going to remove overflow. What I'm going to do now, okay, for this aside or for the column, I need to make it a line. All right, there's 2 ways of this. Not 2 ways. There are several ways of doing it. First is you can use float property. Another one you can change the display of the column or aside to become an inline block. All right. Or you can also use flex. Okay, I'm going to show you the first one method, which is using float property. So what float does, okay, all right. Mr. Loon shared some link. You can go to that link later. All right. So what you can do now, you can set the column to float. Float to the left, meaning that what happened is, once you set the column to float, it will automatically make everything to literally float. It's floating. Okay, so I'm going to use float and set it to left. Okay, so now you see the aside has become like an inline element lah. It's floating to the left. Okay, you see the reason why I set float left, because I want the aside number 1 to be on my left, aside 2 in the middle, aside 3 on my right. If you set your float to the right,
oh, it's like aligned
the
to
other way
right.
around. Yeah, the other way around. You can see now number 3 here, number 2 is in the middle, and number 1 is here. So bar right is supposed to be float left. Okay, and you need to have like a spacing in between, right? So what you can do, you can also add margin. Probably you need to have like 10 pixel on top and left and right auto. But this doesn't make the space even. Cannot. So you need to add a value to it. So probably about 10 px as well. Okay. All right. So reason why this happened is because, remember I told you, the content cannot hold the width of the aside cannot hold this content. So what happened? The aside number 3 collapsed. All right. So what you should do is you need to reduce the value of the margin, probably 5 pixel. Okay. There you go. Again, it doesn't look nice. You can use flex. Look, can you search for flex? Display flex, what happened? Right. So this is one way of doing it, using float left. All right. And another way to do that, what you can do is you can use display property. All right. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to change to display property now. Display. I'm going to use inline block. Okay. Now you go. Now you have some padding or space in between. Let me just add a margin there. Margin. Sorry. Okay. It's almost the same lah. It's almost the same. The control or how you manage the layout looks almost the same as float. All right. Except sometimes what happens if you use float, some other element at the bottom will basically be moving to the top because all these 3 elements is basically floating. All right. So luckily, because I've set this aside inside another parent element, that doesn't make the footer go up. Normally, if you do not do this, if you do not add this, okay, if you don't add the section that holds all these 3 aside, what happens is the footer will go up. Then you have to use another property on the footer so that it will go down back to its normal position. Okay, so far, so good. So far clear or not?
Yeah, I'll say yes.
Okay, all right. I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay, okay.
I'm going to stop the recording.